Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk, bringing you the best global books every day. Today we're introducing the book Lives of Famous People, Part 1. Last time we discussed how Romain Rolland followed his successful Beethoven biography with the second heroic biography, Michelangelo biography, in 1906. If Rolland chose Beethoven's suffering as his entry point, he selected Michelangelo precisely because of suffering in this biography. Judging by objective conditions, it's hard to imagine Michelangelo experiencing any real hardship. First, he came from an aristocratic family with a righteous lineage. Michelangelo Buonarroti valued his noble status, always insisting, "I'm not sculptor Michelangelo, I'm Michelangelo Buonarroti." He prized the Buonarroti name more than his own fame. He believed nobility and commoners were fundamentally different, thinking only nobles could access true artistic greatness. This contrasts sharply with Tolstoy's later ideas. We'll discuss. When his estate was settled after death, people discovered substantial wealth. He never knew poverty. More importantly, he was a child prodigy.
At 13, he already surpassed his art teachers, reportedly arousing their jealousy.
Finding painting too easy, he switched to sculpture and quickly gained fame with masterpieces like Pieta. Crowned as one of Renaissance's big three alongside Da Vinci and Raphael during his lifetime, a storybook success. So why does Rolland portray Michelangelo as synonymous with suffering?
Rolland wasn't lying. Michelangelo's lifelong torment was self-inflicted, what we'd call masochistic tendencies today.
His self-torment first manifested in lifestyle. Despite noble birth, early fame, papal patronage, and political favor,
he had ample wealth, but chose to live like an ascetic monk. He dressed in rags, wearing the same clothes for years until they fused to his skin.
Once, when his boots got stuck, he cut them off, tearing his own skin away with them.
He survived on bread and wine, lived like a beggar, shared beds with apprentices, and routinely forgot to sleep while working. This unhealthy lifestyle left him chronically ill. Yet he refused doctors and family advice, endlessly tormenting himself.
Astonishingly, this sickly man lived to 89, his self-destructive ways baffling everyone who knew him. Later generations still puzzle over his deliberate misery. But Romain Rolland uncovered the reason. Rolland found Michelangelo required suffering to sustain his life and work. He needed pain to fuel endless work. Suffering drove his non-stop creation. Thus, his professional self-torment exceeded personal suffering. A true workaholic, he devoted every waking moment to labor. Whether frescoes, sculptures, architecture, or disliked bronze works, he drowned himself completely in every task. He refused to share artistic glory. While building the Medici Chapel, he reclaimed even Stoney's election duties after initially delegating work. He distrusted others, hiring only mediocre assistants for basic tasks.
Thus, he transformed art into another form of suffering.
Was he numbing pain or stimulating awareness through work? We may never know.
Rolland concluded. He never completed any work meeting his own standards. His early masterpiece, the Medici Chapel, suffered constant delays from political turmoil, leaving only fragmented statues.
In later years, he devoted himself to St. Peter's Basilica's design, considering it sacred work, even refusing payment.
Yet even this remained unfinished, though he left numerous masterpieces. In his own eyes, he remained a lifelong failure, perhaps Michelangelo's greatest torment.
Michelangelo maintained a distorted love for suffering. If Beethoven found joy in suffering, Michelangelo found suffering itself joyful.
His poetry glorified pain. The more I suffer, the more joy I feel.
Roland's biography thoroughly explores this self-imposed martyrdom. By reviewing his life story, we might understand how he became this way.
Ironically, this beauty-obsessed artist considered himself hideously ugly, a devastating self-image.
He loved beautiful people, regardless of gender, from handsome Tommaso Cavalieri to poet Vittoria Colonna. His passion for Cavalieri sparked speculation about his sexuality. His latent love for Colonna faced age gap criticism. In truth, these were platonic relationships, where he worshipped physical beauty. Beauty became his artistic muse and life motivation.
Yet his self-perceived ugliness condemned him to lifelong solitude. Perhaps his self-torment was punishment for feeling physically unworthy.
At 23, he created his first masterpiece that stunned Europe.
The Pietà sculpture depicting Virgin Mary holding crucified Jesus.
Breaking medieval traditions, he sculpted Mary as a youthful beauty. Her profound grief transcended religion, embodying Renaissance humanism through beauty, pain, contrast.
Yet Michelangelo's true suffering began here, perhaps identifying with Christ's crucifixion imagery.
He actively sought suffering while adopting a godlike perspective, setting unreachable artistic ideals. 4 years later, he completed the world-renowned David statue. When an official criticized David's nose, Michelangelo pretended to fix it. The critic declared it perfected. Later generations interpreted this as artistic arrogance. But this arrogance stemmed from his condescending view of ordinary people. His perspective intertwined with suffering, as if enduring pain granted messianic insight. Even his criticized cowardice could be seen as transcendental detachment.
Born in Florence, he witnessed Savonarola's bonfire of the vanities at 15. This entire movement, under religious extremism, damaged Renaissance progress.
George Eliot's novel, Romola, fictionalized these events.
Michelangelo's first response was fleeing, a pattern earning him coward labels. As an adult, he endured multiple wars.
He even sculpted for his friend's murderer while denying their friendship, moral compromises for art. Constant submission to power served his higher artistic goals. In old age, his Last Judgment fresco, following Dante's Inferno, caused scandal with 400 nude figures, drawing harsh criticism.
The Pope ordered the fresco removed and had loincloths painted over the figures. Facing these humiliations, Michelangelo showed no anger. His elevated perspective pitied ignorant actions.
Though these frescoes represent Renaissance pinnacles, they fell short of his own ideals.
Tragically, neither his Medici Chapel nor St. Peter's Basilica reached completion. After enduring immense suffering and sacrifice, he died alone in despair.
Roland shaped Michelangelo's life into a tragic yet magnificent elegy.
Contrary to assumptions, Roland didn't glorify suffering. He lamented Michelangelo's self-inflicted torment.
As life's failure, his biography lacks Beethoven's vitality, brimming instead with contradictions. This biography resembles solemn sculpture, praising divine art while mourning human sorrow. Unlike flowing music, this sculpture demands circling observation to grasp its complexity.
Roland reveals life's irony. Genius wallowing in self-made suffering contradicts inspirational intent.
Acknowledging this contradiction, Roland's confidence in biographical writing wavered. But 1910 brought new events, inspiring his monumental Tolstoy biography.
In 1910, Rowan Roland survived a near-fatal accident, while his Jean Christophe remained obscure after 8 volumes, with little public attention to his condition. Recovering in bed, he received world-shaking news: Tolstoy's death in November 1910. The 82-year-old Tolstoy died alone at a railway station after fleeing home, ending his literary legacy.
Roland urgently completed his biographical trilogy with Life of Tolstoy. Unlike previous subjects, Tolstoy was Roland's contemporary idol and personal correspondent. This most mature biography offers balanced perspectives, less stirring than Beethoven's but more authentically conflicted. In depth and artistic control, Tolstoy surpasses its predecessors. First, Roland's seminal correspondence with Tolstoy during youth. From 1885-1887. Paris saw Tolstoy's works, like War and Peace and Anna Karenina, translated along with early novels. Tolstoy's works ignited Parisian youth, like Goethe's Sorrows of Young Werther had earlier. His early works inspired youth, like Beethoven did, advocating love-driven social reform. Roland's generation enshrined Tolstoy as literary idol and truth incarnate. Then Tolstoy published What Is to Be Done, marking radical ideological shift. This pamphlet attacked Roland's childhood idols, Beethoven and Shakespeare. Tolstoy's radical criticism of Roland's sacred idols shocked European cultural circles.
This pamphlet forced European youth to choose between Tolstoy and their cultural icons, shattering Roland's worldview.
Struggling for answers, young Roland wrote Tolstoy a lengthy letter. The established Tolstoy responded with a 30-page letter, advocating humanitarian ideals and perseverance through love. This correspondence liberated Roland's spirit, renewing his idealistic courage. Tolstoy's influence provided direction rather than complete answers. Tolstoy's own perpetual ideological evolution became his lifelong theme and source of suffering. Unlike previous biographies, Roland emphasized Tolstoy's complexity over mere suffering. Orphaned young and undisciplined, Tolstoy's wild youth foreshadowed later transformations. As an unreliable student, he changed majors before ultimately dropping out of university. He utilized free time to read extensively in literature and philosophy, laying foundations for writing. Ironically, while French youth worshipped Russian Tolstoy, young Tolstoy himself adored French thought. The French and Russian revolutions remain Europe's most dramatic modern milestones. Franco-Russian intellectual exchange shares an inexplicable intimacy. Tolstoy particularly admired French philosophers Rousseau and Montesquieu. Young Tolstoy idolized Rousseau's Enlightenment ideals and personal charisma. During existential crisis, he wrote his own Confessions. Following Rousseau's example, achieving ideological transformation. Montesquieu's egalitarianism fueled Tolstoy's lifelong conflict between noble status and peasant liberation ideals.
Though academically mediocre, he envied high-achieving commoner classmates, deepening aristocratic self-loathing. His privileged idleness shamed him compared to hard-working commoners. Failed attempts to improve peasant lives on his estate bred mutual distrust.
Gogol satirized these failures in Dead Souls, while Tolstoy processed them literarily. Epics like War and Peace explore noble commoner tensions, cementing his literary legacy. Seeking purpose. Tolstoy enlisted in the military. Army years became his most fulfilling period, earning lieutenant promotion through valor. Commoner soldiers' authenticity contrasted sharply with aristocratic hypocrisy. He despised. These experiences inspired the Cossacks, depicting military life. After returning from war, he advocated aristocrat democratization.
Yet against Russia's stagnant society, he remained powerless.
Influenced by Rousseau's Enlightenment ideals, he rejected religion and sought to reform society through love.
But reality extinguished his ideals, leaving even himself unconvinced.
Even after literary success, he constantly rejected his previous philosophies.
His rebellious nature alienated him from literary circles. He broke with Turgenev, denounced Beethoven, Shakespeare, and wrote self-critical confessions.
When expected to write more novels, he instead focused on educational reforms.
Abandoning present society, he pinned hopes on future generations, baffling family and friends. Growing estrangement from his wife culminated in his final flight from home.
Though capricious in thought, his critical spirit remained constant. His tireless critiques of reality, ideologies, and self never found final answers. Though Resurrection is considered his ideological culmination,
his final act, fleeing home, proved his critical journey remained unfinished.
This relentless critique made him Europe's supreme realist critic. Roland structured the biography using Tolstoy's literary works as chapter guides.
Failing to resolve society's contradictions, he guarded love's flame in solitude.
Posthumously, this flame ignited future literary and ideological movements. Yet his critique remained descriptive rather than prophetic, reflecting rather than shaping eras. But Roland's ideal hero was someone who could provide such judgy power to the world.
Ultimately, Tolstoy remained an intellectual giant but emotional weakling in Roland's eyes, never matching Beethoven's heroic stature.
Beethoven represented Roland's heroic archetype, a combination of greatness and suffering rarely found. Before writing Beethoven, Roland had planned biographies for Goethe, Shakespeare, Mazzini, and others, compiling extensive research materials. After Tolstoy, Roland abandoned his biographical series until later, writing Mahatma Gandhi, focusing on non-violent resistance. Why did he abandon his grand biographical project when heroic figures still existed? Firstly, practical constraints prevented continuation. The final, Tolstoy, 1911, coincided with intensive work on Jean-Christophe.
Had Tolstoy not died suddenly, even this third biography might not have been written.
Would UWI's outbreak redirected Roland's energy to anti-war optimism through essays and commentaries? More fundamentally, Roland's biographical ideal proved unrealistic. Historical truths often conflicted with desired narratives.
Michelangelo's failures and Tolstoy's contradictions diverged from heroic ideals. Continuing meant choosing between historical accuracy and artistic vision, an agonizing dilemma for this academic-turned-writer.
His shift to fiction proved remarkably successful. Jean-Christophe, inspired by Beethoven, surpassed his biographies to become a realist masterpiece, cementing Roland's literary legacy. But that's another story. Returning to Lives of Great Men. Roland's musical writing style permeates these biographies. Building on historical facts, he distilled powerful themes of suffering into timeless heroic hymns. These remain definitive literary biographies of these giants even today. Inspired by Roland, Stefan Zweig wrote decisive moments in history and authored Roland's biography. In China, these biographies influenced generations, including Lu Jun and Zhao Hong, shaping realist literature.
Translator Fu Lei wept upon reading Beethoven during his dark youth, later becoming a Beethoven scholar.
Fu's musical translations and correspondence with Roland greatly enhanced the work's Chinese reception. Fu Lei's version remains the definitive Chinese translation of these biographies. Let's review key points of this lecture series. The trilogy comprises Beethoven, Michelangelo, and Tolstoy biographies. Common theme: greatness through suffering, not glorifying pain, but empowering the afflicted. Beethoven stands as the most complete work, embodying Roland's ideal hero who loves life despite its harshness.
Michelangelo is a tragic elegy, artistic genius, haunted by self-destructive tendencies. Despite masterpieces like Pieta and Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo remained life's failure in Roland's eyes.
The Tolstoy biography, though most mature, brims with contradictions, documenting his evolving philosophy and creative process behind masterpieces like War and Peace and Resurrection. Originally part of Roland's unfinished heroic biography project, these works nurtured his musical prose style. Roland's emotionally charged writing distilled a new heroic spirit that redefined heroism itself. This vision profoundly influenced writers worldwide. That concludes our exploration of Lives of Great Men. Keynotes are below the audio. Until tomorrow.